Have you ever been hangry? A portmanteau of hungry and angry. I bet you had. And so do bears in their active hunting months when not fed in captivity. But during hibernation, bears go through seasonal fasting. Fasting? Is that applicable to humans? Well, let's find out. Effects of fasting on autophagy, immune and inflammatory response. I'm Myrtle Pettit, a doctoral student of the University of Bridgeport, presenting my dissertation.
Hunger is driven by ghrelin, aka the hunger hormone, which increases the orexigenic or food-seeking behavior. When food is ingested, it is metabolized in glucose polymer, absorbed in the small intestine, and diffused in the bloodstream. There are six main core biochemical pathways for metabolism, namely glycolysis, TCA cycle, which stands for tricarboxylic acid cycle, also known as Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle. Third is fatty acid oxidation. Fourth is fatty acid synthesis. And lastly, amino acid synthesis. In all this, glycolysis remains the central metabolic pathway. There are several ways to generate energy as body fuel. The most important pathway is glycolysis, wherein glucose is converted to energy in the form of 2-ADP and 2-pyruvate. If the pyruvate are fed into the TCA or Krebs cycle, it generates in total 34 to 36 units of energy in the form of ATP or adenosine triphosphate, which other researchers may agree and disagree. Next is lipolysis, wherein fats or lipids are converted to energy with byproducts of glycerol and fatty acids. Glycerol is released in the bloodstream but gets absorbed in the liver or kidneys, metabolized further, and enters glycolysis. Free fatty acids also get released in the blood for cellular uptake, which often binds in albumin and absorbed in the muscles and kidneys. When free fatty acids oxidize for energy, it gets converted to ketones and go through the process of ketosis. Ketosis is another metabolic pathway wherein ketone bodies are converted to energy. In the state of fasting, there's a lack of glucose and glycogen, which effectively triggers the breakdown of free fatty acids, moving to a ketogenic pathway. Glycogen is depleted within 48 hours of fasting. Free fatty acids are converted to ketones, used as a critical energy for the brain, other organs, and tissues. There are three types of ketones metabolized in the liver: the beta hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate, and acetone. The first two are released into the bloodstream, while acetone is expelled through breath. BHB is further converted to acetoacetate, which is utilized energy in the form of ATP. Fasting induces autophagy. Autophagy is a critical self-cleaning mechanism that engulfs and digests abnormal or aberrant cells, including cellular debris. Autophagy can regulate the immune system, but can be mediated also by the immune system. Thus, the relationship between autophagy and the immune system is complex. Once autophagy is initiated, phagophore recruits and recycles cellular debris. More phagophores surround the cellular debris. Assemblage of phagophores complete a vesicle becoming autophagosome. Endosome is integrated into autophagosome, which becomes amphisome. Amphisome fuses with lysosome and becomes autolysosome, which eventually leads to breakdown and degradation. This dynamic process of autophagy is called autophagy flux. Autophagy is a crucial mechanism in the clearance of abnormal cells and cellular debris. In senescence or aging, autophagy is lessened, thereby leading to reduced clearance of abnormal cells and cellular debris, leading to its accumulation and further aging. Fasting inhibits mTOR, which activates autophagy and promotes ketosis. So when more ketone bodies are produced, it further drives autophagy. mTOR stands for mechanistic or mammalian target of rapamycin. There are two complexes, mTOR complex 1 and mTOR complex 2. mTOR proper expression maintains energy and nutrient balance for cellular growth. Unfortunately, overexpression of mTOR leads to tumor growth, cancer formation, and genetic diseases. I'd like to emphasize on rapamycin on mTOR, mechanistic or mammalian target of rapamycin. Rapamycin is a pharmacological management to reduce mTOR complex 1 and mTOR complex 2 overexpression. There are other ways to block mTOR, such as exercise, reduced protein consumption, ketogenic diet, and calorie restriction. But the most effective one is fasting. Fasting impacts immune response through cellular programming, stem cell activation, immune cells regulation, cancer-killing T cells proliferation, and reduction of circulating immune cells in autoimmune disease, specifically MS or multiple sclerosis. Acute inflammation activates innate immune response to pathogen and injury by recognizing pathogen-associated molecular patterns and damage-associated molecular patterns. Thereafter, granulocytes respond with inflammatory cytokines and lipid mediators such as leukotrienes and prostaglandins. Granulocytes are cleared through efferocytosis, or burying dead and dying cells. The process in chronic inflammation is similar in acute inflammation. However, it is prolonged and sustained. Pro-inflammatory cytokines become active at inflammatory sites. Three of the most well-known pro-inflammatory cytokine markers are interleukin 6, interleukin 1 beta, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Fasting was shown to promote suppression of interleukin 6, interleukin 1 beta, and TNF alpha. A cascade of overblown, violent inflammatory responses leads to a critical condition called cytokine storm. In fasting, since ketones are generated through ketogenic pathway, ketones are converted to BHB or beta hydroxybutyrate, which suppresses cytokine storm. BHB has immunomodulating effects. It blocks NLR family pyrene domain containing 3, abbreviated as NLRP3. It inhibits histone deacetylases, activates anti-inflammatory GPR109A or G protein coupled receptor 109A, and lastly, a specific RBHB dulls innate immune responses from inducing cytokine storm, and supports adaptive immune cells proliferation, thereby reducing cytokine signaling. Immunometabolism is the central metabolism for innate and adaptive immunity regulation. Let's take an in-depth look at the metabolism and immune system connection. It was first observed in the adipose tissues of obese, which triggers inflammatory cytokines. It was also observed in the metabolic pathway of immune cells. mTOR plays a critical role in immune metabolism and cellular fate. Innate immune cells follow metabolic pathways with metabolic programming. Cellular metabolism determines interaction with inflammatory responses. And lastly, metabolic resources, such as energy and building blocks, is at the heart of immunometabolism. Inflammaging, aging caused by upregulated pro-inflammatory cytokines. Immunosenescence, aging due to continuous decline of the immune system. And finally, metaflammation, a contracted word of metabolic inflammation, which showcases the intricate connection between metabolism and immune system. In the pathophysiology of metaflammation, metabolic syndrome has close linkages with metaflammation and visceral adiposity. Excess nutrient is the very issue which impairs adipocyte metabolism, changes adipokine secretion, and increases inflammatory cells present in adipose tissues. The downward pathway leads to mitochondrial dysfunction, reduced fatty acid oxidation, triglyceride accumulation, increased adipose tissue fibrosis, and induced lipotoxicity. More adipocytes or fat cells means more inflammatory cells present on site. White adipocytes are more abundant in people with obesity, while brown adipocytes are more present in slim people. Beige adipocytes has less mitochondria compared to brown adipocytes. These adipocytes function differently. Brown adipocytes are more efficient metabolically than the white counterpart. However, white adipocytes can convert to brown adipocytes. This process is called browning or beiging, which is induced by cold exposure and fasting, causing a non-shivering thermogenesis. There are several longevity pathways triggered by fasting, which protect against oxidative stress. AMPK pathway or adenosine monophosphate activated kinase pathway, the sirtuin pathway, and foxhead box-O or FOXO pathway. AMPK reduces mTOR expression and improves NAD+ antioxidant, which stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Sirtuins consist of 7 different types, with unique role from protection against oxidative stress and DNA damage to senescence protection and telomere attrition delay, which improves longevity. Sirtuins work synergistically with FOXO or foxhead box-O, which is essential in oxidative stress defense, autophagy, DNA repair, and longevity. To put the concepts together, fasting suppresses mTOR, an insulin-like growth factor, 1, or IGF-1, but activates AMPK, sirtuins, FOXO, PPAR-Y, and autophagy pathways. PPAR-Y, or peroxisome proliferator receptor Y, improves lipid metabolism, which further drives autophagy. PGC1 alpha, or PPAR-Y coactivator 1 alpha, works collaboratively with sirtuins and indirectly with FOXO for glucose and lipid metabolism while supporting mitochondrial function. PGC1 alpha is induced tremendously by fasting, creating an adaptive thermogenesis response and a beiging or browning effect on white adipocytes, thus improving weight loss with genuine fat loss. Statement of the problem. Challenges in the immune system are more pronounced in one or a combination of viral infection, bacterial infection, autoimmune disease, acute and chronic diseases, and more. The need to identify a simple modality to improve healthy immune response is needed. Investigating fasting on its potential to reduce inflammatory biomarkers and initiate autophagy with a proper immune response is warranted. The purpose of this research was to determine the effects of fasting on autophagy, immune response, and inflammatory response. The literature review explored appropriate themes and concepts relating to this topic and analyzed studies from 2016 to 2022. Consolidated studies based on the criteria aimed to contribute to the pool of knowledge, with critical components extracted, while commonality was highlighted in a single organized source of information. This literature review aimed to answer the following research questions. Research question 1. What are the effects of fasting on autophagy? Research question 2. What are the effects of fasting on immune response? Research question 3. What are the effects of fasting on inflammatory response? Sub-question 3A. What are the effects of fasting on metabolic regulation? Sub-question 3B. What are the effects of fasting on oxidative stress? Let's go to methodology. With a search strategy, keywords used were fasting, intermittent fasting, Ramadan fasting, fasting and autophagy, fasting and immunity, fasting and immune response, fasting and inflammation, fasting and inflammatory response, fasting and metabolism, fasting and metabolic regulation, fasting and oxidative stress. Search databases were PubMed, Google Scholar, BMC, Wallstrom Library, Journal of Fasting and Health, True North Fasting Database, Science Open, and Core. Inclusion criteria: ages 15 to 99, subjects doing intermittent fasting, pre and post fasting, fasters versus non-fasters, healthy versus unhealthy subjects, intermittent fasting effect on the immune system, and original article. Exclusion criteria: reviews, meta-analysis, qualitative studies, animal studies, pilot studies, not full text, unrelated to fasting and immunity, fasting blood sugar or fasting blood glucose, and more. Time filter includes studies in 2016 to 2022. Language filter: English. Target journals: Journal of American College of Nutrition, Journal of Nutritional Science, Journal of Fasting and Health, Nutritional Journal, Nutrients. American Journal of Physiology, Endocrinology, and Metabolism. International Journal of Preventive Medicine. BMC Gastroenterology. Plus One. Aging Cell. Diabetes Research and Clinical Practice. Obesity and Scientific Reports. Identification and selection of primary studies was conducted through Prisma Flow. Qualified articles were further examined through the critical assessment of studies. On this literature review, 44 studies were critically assessed from the generated results of various scientific search engines, which resulted to a sample population of 3,114. 44 studies were published from 18 different countries. The US remained the top country in publishing 7 qualified fasting studies from 2016 to 2022. Iran had 5 studies which focused mainly on Ramadan fasting, similarly in Middle Eastern countries listed below, followed by Turkey 4, China 4, Germany 3, Saudi Arabia 3, and UAE 3. Studies from Tunisia were 2.5, with 0.5 shared with France for the multi-country, multi-center perspective study. Austria, Denmark, and Malaysia shared similar results, each had 2. The following countries had 1 included study each: Brazil, India, Indonesia, Israel, Italy, and Slovakia. The types of fasts were also categorized in a pie chart. Ramadan fast had the highest number of peer-reviewed journals, 20, on the primary studies. It is then followed by alternate day fast, 6, 16-8 time-restricted eating and feeding, 5, Buchinger fast, 3, 72-hour water fast, 2, and Sunnah fasting, 2. The remaining fasting studies only had 1 study each: Ramadan type fast, 18-hour fast, 11-day water fast, 10-day zero-calorie fast, 350 kilocalorie per day 5-day fast, and 500 kilocalorie per day 2 consecutive day fast. Study design. There were 19 perspective, 5 perspective observational, and 1 multi-center perspective study. Randomized controlled trials shared a good representation of 11 studies. 9 RCTs, 1 double-blind RCT, and 1 single-blind RCT, in addition to randomized controlled crossovers and 1 non-randomized crossover design. There were only 2 experimental studies, or 1 experimental and 1 randomized quasi-experimental. Furthermore, there were 2 retrospective studies: 1 retrospective study, 1 retrospective case control study, and 1 longitudinal study. Let's go ahead and answer the research questions based on the results. Research question 1. What are the effects of fasting on autophagy? Autophagy was upregulated as observed in autophagy upstream regulators, autolysosome members, and essential autophagy-related proteins after 72 hours of water fast. Autophagy initiator, ULK1, increased significantly after 72-hour water fast. Autophagy genes LC3A and autophagy-related protein 12 increased after 4 days of 18-hour fast. Research question 2. What are the effects of fasting on immune response? 72-hour water fast resulted to innate immunity modulation. 1,163% neutrophils increase and 774% natural killer cells increase. Adaptive immunity boosted with a 364% T cells increase and 195% B cells increase. The effect of 16-8 fast or 16-hour fast and 8-hour feeding in elite endurance athletes downregulated inflammatory interleukin 6 and neutrophils to lymphocyte ratio, thus reducing inflammation, whereas leukocytes did not change, which reduced athletes' susceptibility to infection. Significant reduction also was observed in inflammatory cytokine interleukin 1 and DUSP gene, which decreased inflammation and autoimmune dysregulation in Ramadan fasters. Ramadan fast had a 40-fold increase in ASGR2, exhibiting clearance of glycoproteins and dead cell debris in the liver. Research question 3. What are the effects of fasting on inflammatory response? Inflammatory markers interleukin 6, interleukin 8, interleukin beta, CRP, and TNF alpha were repeatedly downregulated in Ramadan fasting and alternate day fasting. Increased macrophages in adipose tissues activated liposomal lipolysis, thus improving metabolism. Anti-inflammatory cytokines adiponectin, apelin, leptin, and visfatin improved significantly. Furthermore, coagulation improved substantially as marked in prothrombin time and activated prothrombin time and expressed in decreased inflammatory fibrinogen. Research sub-question 3A. What are the effects of fasting on metabolic regulation? Studies on the Ramadan fast and 16-8 fast attenuated the body weight, BMI, body fat percentage, body mass, fat-free mass, fat mass index, visceral fat mass, muscle mass, waist to hip ratio, and total body water. Similar results also were observed in a twice-a-week intermittent fast. Great improvements on the status of glucose, HbA1c, fasting insulin, and insulin resistance through HOMA-IR, area under the curve insulin and area under the curve insulin over area under the curve glucose, IGF-1, and HLDL-C in various types of fasting. It also was shown that various metabolic key regulators had a 15-fold to 127-fold increase, suggesting a significant increase in metabolism. Ketones were greatly upregulated, whereas heart rate, systolic blood pressure, and Framingham cardiovascular risk score were downregulated in alternate day fast. Hunger was reduced, as observed in downregulated ghrelin and upregulated leptin. In the 16-8 fast, a stunning 73.3% improvement in the menstrual cycle of non-ovulating PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome women. A significant improvement in the quality of life of patients with metabolic syndrome was noted after a 5-day, 350 kilocalorie per day fast, tackling physical function, pain, vitality, and health perceptions. Research sub-question 3b. What are the effects of fasting on oxidative stress? Oxidative stress index and total oxidant status decreased significantly, while antioxidant status significantly increased in Ramadan fasters. Incredible increase in antioxidant stress genes SOD, TFAM, and NRF2. Sunnah fasting every Monday and Thursday showed a similar result in SOD increase. Longevity factors FOXO1, sirtuin-1, and sirtuin-3 have significantly improved in a 5-day Bukkinger fast. Sunnah's twice-a-week fast was found protective against free radicals with down-regulated DNA damage markers. Remarkable improvements were observed in mRNA and miRNA expression, including mitochondrial DNA content and quality. Implications. Fasting mandates and restrictions can be difficult to gain support for approval and implementation. However, economic incentives can be applied in reduced premiums in medical insurance for regular intermittent fasters. Marketing limit policies may enhance banning television and internet food advertisements that encourage indulgence and overeating. Informational provision can be enhanced by fasting packets and digital fasting campaigns sponsored by government and non-government organizations, including religious groups and communities. Social media campaigns are another informational provision strategy participated by social media influencers to create healthy intermittent fasting awareness and trends. And lastly, environmental default policies complemented by behavioral science approaches can be implemented through caloric restriction and time-restricted eating in schools, offices, and hospitals. Recommendations. As federal policies address food insecurity and healthy food access, it is also crucial to give the same attention to addressing overeating or overfeeding. There are two crucial areas of focus for future policies and programs. 1. Calorie restriction programs and time-restricted eating in schools, workplaces, and hospitals, supported by government incentives. And 2. Instituting government-funded fasting centers with food addiction rehabilitation programs around the country. In conclusion, the 2020s emerging infectious diseases accentuated varied immune and inflammatory issues amidst health disparities. Immunosenescence further challenged the prevailing problems due to an aging population and as a result of comorbidities regardless of age. Furthermore, these comorbidities such as diabetes mellitus, cardiovascular diseases, and other metabolic diseases root most of its pathology in unhealthy diet and lifestyle. Overnutrition is a primary risk factor in many modern diseases. Fasting targets the issue head-on, counteracting overnutrition, activating autophagy, and reducing metabolic clinical parameters, anthropometric measurements, and body compositions. Downregulation of pro-inflammatory cytokines and upregulation of anti-inflammatory cytokines bring a healthy immune and inflammatory response to healthy subjects, especially in metabolically unhealthy subjects, with a reduction in the hunger hormone ghrelin and an increase in appetite-regulating hormone leptin. These beneficial effects make fasting a feasible strategy to resolve overnutrition and improve obesity-related diseases. Significant improvement in Framingham cardiovascular risk can lower the risk of those with cardiovascular diseases.
Fasting in ancient and biblical times was practiced for cultural and religious reasons, which contextually applies even in the 21st century. In recent times, fasting has emerged with scientific studies and breakthroughs with its physiological benefits. In the face of a costly challenge of modern diseases to the healthcare system, it pragmatically calls for inexpensive solutions rather than sophisticated strategies. A simple fasting therapy blends old perspectives with new evidence based results in preventive and therapeutic multimodal applications. In conjunction, fasting evinces wholeness in wellness and enhance one's spectrum of health, vitality, and longevity. In embarking on this journey of research, I had to personally apply intermittent fasting to myself. I had a lump on my back, which grew halfway through my doctoral study and never went away. From the time I realized it, it already grew on a 3/4 golf ball size on my back. But after a year of inconsistent intermittent fasting, from 3 to 4 days of water fast to 2 meals a day, the 3/4 golf ball size lump on my back reduced to this. From my personal experience and perspective, that's the power of autophagy, activated by intermittent fasting.
A step toward the door of the University of Bridgeport was a miracle in and of itself. As I recall, the enrollment was already closed, but reopened for one remaining spot in a cohort. That spot was thankfully divinely appointed for me. My highest praise to the Lord, my provider. This journey was an uphill climb, and as I come to its close, it leaves a bittersweet chord. This dissertation would not have been possible without the work and inspiration of the people before me and around me. The famous words of Isaac Newton mirror my sentiment. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Dr. Oscar could see, I stand in awe at how brilliant you are as a professor, and yet generous in sharing protocols and tools that pragmatically work in your experience as a gifted and seasoned clinician. Without hesitation, you connected theory and practice and shared relevant clinical insights we would not have known otherwise. I'm deeply honored to have been under your tutelage, but most, having met one of the most brilliant minds in my lifetime. Dr. Albert Grazia, your kind office and responsive leadership style drew me. Thank you for always being so accommodating with my concerns and for taking action promptly. You're a man of few words who brings much result despite your unnoticed and unrecognized hard work. my heartfelt gratitude for all that you do for us students and the university. Dr. Ray Elliott, your dissertation was my pattern in following the proper formatting before you even became part of my dissertation committee. Thank you for such deeper insight, keenness to detail, and excellent editing skills all throughout. They incredibly saved me time. You're a gem. Dr. Tia Warwick, your warmth and quick response gave me encouragement to facilitate the necessary changes, specifically in adding the limitations and correcting the references. You have greatly contributed to helping me with the nitty-gritty details of finalizing my dissertation. To my mom, Marlene Davis, who was my first teacher, for sharing the mission and the vision of our health message. Dr. Sam Deason and the late Dr. N.G. Demondon, for laying the groundwork at the Institute of Natural Healing in Subic Bay. To Barbara O'Neill, for championing the philosophy of a self-healing body by design, given the right conditions. To my best friend Eden Elisan, my longtime friend Rosalie Gamaro, my colleague and friend Dr. Natalia Velasquez, my former professor Dr. Miriam Estrada, my mentor and friend Dr. Ruby Kamagay Tingonan, and my chair, Dr. Oscar Kutsi, for bringing me back to one of the most important determinants of health, nutrition. To my husband Michael, for being my strength and stay, my comfort and my home. You have sacrificed a lot and patiently supported me, even when I felt I couldn't go on. To my dear Eliana, for being Mama's little teacher, teaching me inevitably life's little lessons. Your heart blooms with sweetness and springs with innocent delight. To Mom and Dad, for taking care of our daughter when I needed time. And finally, to the giver of all good gifts, with no variableness, neither shadow of turning, the Lord of the seventh-day Sabbath, my refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble.
To all, my heartfelt thanks.